Welcome to this short tutorial about the basic functionality in the transaction register in Standard Accounts. This tutorial will describe the basic functionality for entering transactions in the general ledger. If you would like to know more about advanced functionalities, please have a look at our tutorial about advanced functionality in the transaction register. In Standard Accounts, an individual accounting event is known as a transaction. Every accounting event should be recorded as a separate transaction in the transaction register, which you can find in the General Ledger module. Depending on the nature of an individual transaction, you can enter it directly to the transaction register yourself, or it will be created automatically from other registers. Typically, transactions representing sales invoices, payables, receipts, and payments will be generated automatically. Let's now create a transaction manually. Go to the General Ledger module by selecting the Switch Module icon in the Navigation Center and then choosing General Ledger. To open the transaction register, first select the Registers icon in the Navigation Center and then select Transactions from the list. The Transactions Browse window opens, showing a list of transactions already entered. This window shows some important details about each transaction, including the transaction number, transaction date, and text description. The transaction number is made up of two parts, a number and a prefix. The prefix describes the transaction. For instance, the prefix in a transaction generated from a sales invoice would be S/INV. Press the Create button and choose New Transaction to create a new transaction. Alternatively, you can use the New Transaction icon in the Navigation Center. In the transaction window, the first field is Number. Usually you can ignore this field as the transaction number of a new transaction will be placed here automatically by Standard Accounts when you save the transaction for the first time. The new number will follow on from the number of the last transaction you entered. When you start using Standard Accounts, the transaction number sequence will start at 1 and continue consecutively. If you want the sequence to start from another number, change the number of the first transaction before saving. Standard Accounts will then continue the sequence from there. Enter the effective date of the transaction in the Trans Date field. This should be the date when the transaction occurred and does not have to be the same as the date when you are entering the transaction. The date from the previous transaction entered is offered as a default. In the Text field, enter a short description of the transaction. This will also be shown in the Transactions Browse window. Use the matrix to record the details of the transaction, or, in other words, the debit and credit entries. In the Account field in the first row, enter the beginning of the account number and the Account Pay Special window will open, where you can select an account. Alternatively, you can open the Pay Special window by pressing Command and Enter on your keyboard. When you choose an account, its name will be copied to the Description field. You can change it if necessary. Use the debit and credit columns to enter the debit or credit value of the posting to the account. If necessary, enter a text code in the text code field. If you have specified a text code in the account record, it will be copied to this field automatically. If you need to change it, press Command and Enter and select a text code from the Pay Special window. Repeat this process using as many rows as you need, until the transaction is balanced, meaning until the debits and credit values are equal. A transaction has to balance before you can save it. In the bottom right-hand corner of the window, the debit and credit totals will be displayed. If there is a difference between the two totals, the difference will also be displayed. You will not be able to save the transaction if this is not zero. If you enter a transaction first with debits and then with credits, you can go to the credit field in the last row and press Enter. A balancing amount will be brought in. Save the transaction by pressing the Save button. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any more questions about this or any other functionality in Standard Accounts, please watch our other tutorials, visit our forum, or read the FAQs on our website at www.standard-accounts.com.